Hi, my name is Kate Helmstetter. I am a member of the Gettysburg Bold Council, which is the Virgins of the last decade. Uh, Thank you for being here today. The Bold Council represents all graduates of the last 10 years and works to enhance the connection between young alumni and Gettysburg College. So we're really excited to be co-hosting this very first alumni J term along with the Office of Alumni Relations. We have an alumni relations staff, or we have a staff member here, Jasmine Frederick, who is also here to help facilitate today. But now I think we're all excited to get ahead and get going with this program that we have for you today. It's really very exciting. It's called From the Word to the Streets, Activism Post-Gettysburg. And I'd love to introduce our panelists. Hana Huskic grew up in Kakanj, Bosnia and Herzegovina. I'm sorry about that. They graduated from United World College in Mostar in 2017 and Gettysburg College in 2022 with a BA in anthropology and minors in women, gender and sexuality studies and peace and justice studies. They live in Sarajevo and are completing a master's in democracy and human rights in Southeast Europe, coordinated by the University of Sarajevo and the University of Bologna. Danny is a behavioral and data scientist at Nudge Lebanon, that's Daniel Jones, a primary contracting research NGO of the UN based in the Middle East. He has worked on numerous international projects in behavioral and developmental economics, security and peace research, and other similar fields. His focus regionally is in the Middle East and North Africa, where he's resided for multiple years, to Eastern and Western Africa as well. Danny holds a Master of Arts honors degree in International Relations from the University of Chicago and 2 Bachelor of Arts with honors degrees in both public policy and religious studies from Gettysburg College. And our final presenter today is Christina Noto. Christina Noto grew up in Cooperstown, New York, and graduated from Gettysburg College in 2019 with the BA in History and minors in Women, Gender and Sexuality Studies and Peace and Justice Studies. After graduation, Christina completed an alternative teacher certification program and taught for 3 years in Washington, D.C. She now lives in Denver with her dog, Quincy. So without further ado, I'd love to hand it over to our panelists, our presenters today, and have them take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that introduction. I'm just impressed. I'm assuming you read a lot of that. I'm impressed at how well you read that. So thank you so much. Well, we're so excited that you all are here today. Because it is a smaller group, we will try to keep some of our presentation a little bit shorter so then we can have more of a discussion, because there is so much knowledge in this room. And although, we're here to present, you all have a lot of knowledge as well. And we would love to hear that. I see that Daniel just sent in the chat, we all created a toolkit for you all, and this discusses the major themes of our presentation, so feel free to take a look at that. This mainly encompasses everything that we're going to be discussing today. Awesome, so I will get started. So Kate did mainly my introduction, but my name is Christina. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and like she said, I'm currently living in Denver. And I'm really excited to be here today. And I just want to preface, I'm definitely sharing my experiences and things that I've learned, before Gettysburg, at Gettysburg, and post Gettysburg. A lot of these conversations I had in some of my classes, or I had with my mentors. I've had conversations with Hakim and Hana and Daniel about a lot of these themes in therapy and with my friends. And so a lot of what I'm sharing is kind of like a synthesis of a lot of the conversations that I've had. But the main theme of what I'm going to discuss is, sorry, I'm just like reading on my other screen, is how the guiding question, I guess, is how can I integrate activism into my daily routine in a meaningful yet manageable way? What small steps can I take to make a significant impact in my community? And how can I balance personal education and action in the realm of activism? And so I'll share some examples from my life and then some specific steps that you all could take if you would like. I went to Gettysburg and I found that while at Gettysburg, organizing people and planning protests was something, while it was difficult, it was relatively easier than post grad. And I think that at Gettysburg, because it's a smaller environment, there was a possibility to make an impact on policy, or you could see that impact. You know, you have a protest or you meet with someone, and then maybe they're going to take steps to change that. But when I graduated from Gettysburg and I started, I don't want to say the real world because Gettysburg is also the real world. But when I was out in the world post Gettysburg, I found it a little bit discouraging because even if I went to a protest or had a conversation with someone, I didn't really see the policy change and the impact. And I have learned that change is slow. But unfortunately, I wish it was fast. And so after I graduated from Gettysburg, I started teaching, and it felt almost impossible to make policy change. You know, I was a new teacher in an environment that I didn't really know a lot about. And yet there were things that I would see in the classroom that I'm like, oh, I don't like that, or that's not really right. But it was hard to speak up because people didn't know who I was. Why are they going to listen to a new teacher? And I also needed a job. Like I needed money. And it's wild what will happen when you need to make money. And so what I decided was that I would take small actions to make an impact in my classroom. So for example, some teachers separated their students by boys and girls. I decided that I wouldn't use that language and I would do like shoelaces versus non-shoelaces, long hair or short hair. Um, and so that was one small thing that I did to like prevent the um, like the um, reinforcement of gender norms. When the pandemic happened and I was teaching on Zoom, I put my pronouns in my bio. When my students asked about them, I was just like, yo, you call me Miss Noto. You would say, like, she is really cool. That's my pronouns. Her class is so fun. What pronouns do you use? And then kids started using those in their bio. You know, I didn't get into the politics of all of it, but it was something that we could talk about. And then during the summer of 2020, I was off that summer and had the ability to go to protests. But I recognized that a lot of my friends didn't have that ability because they were working and again need a job. And because of my identity as a teacher, I was able to protest, and I really appreciate that. But I also recognize that that's not everybody's experience. And then I moved to Denver, and while I moved to Denver and had community with my few friends, I didn't really have a large community. In DC, there was a large community of Gettysburg alums that I could connect with. And so I felt like I had to start all over in terms of creating that community. And so a lot of the things that I did, the first thing I did actually was register to vote. And so if you're able to register to vote in your communities, please, please do that. It's super important. I find that right now I'm very discouraged by politics, but voting and using your voice, especially in local elections, is really, really important. So if you can, register to vote. Something else that I did when I moved to Denver was just I started following different organizations and small community organizations on Instagram. And then when they had something coming up, whether it's like a clothing drive or a protest or information about something happening in the community, that was a way to educate myself about whatever was happening. And then I also found a therapist that was located in Denver. So I was seeing a mental health practitioner um, in DC, and I was really, really, really bummed to not be able to see her when I moved to Denver. But I think that ended up being really wonderful because by seeing a therapist that lived in Denver, she was also able to tell me about local resources and things that were happening in Denver. And so I think protecting your mental health and supporting your mental health is super important. And so if you're able to and you're able to like see a therapist or a social worker or whatever it is, I found that seeing someone in my community was definitely super helpful. Um, and then just generally, I think in terms of my identity, um, until recently, I had health insurance, and that was because I was 26 and still on my parents' health insurance. And then, I lost my job and had to find a new job where I got insurance. And all of a sudden, a lot of the things that I valued, um, it made it difficult to, for example, this week there's a strike for Palestine. I currently can't strike because I will lose my job, which means I'll lose my health insurance. And so I find that, that's in many ways super discouraging that I can't strike. But there's other small things that I can do that still make an impact, even if it doesn't feel really big like striking, which I'll touch on in a moment. And so just generally, my experience is with activism is trying to balance a lot of the day-to-day things that I need to do to survive, but also trying to align my actions with my values. And so in terms of just like small steps that I've taken that do have an impact, or I feel do have an impact, that I think other people can embrace. So I'm not saying that you all need to be vegans, but I did just become a vegan. And so that's something small in my life that I do every day, that I know, you know, helps the environment. I'm not saying that you all need to be vegans or need to be vegetarians, but I think being conscious about where your food comes from and what kinds of food you consume is really powerful. And so maybe you can, if you have the finances, maybe you can shop at a local farmer's market, or maybe your community has like a refill station for soap, just so you're using less plastic. Maybe you could do a meatless Monday, and just be mindful about where you're consuming, you know, products from. Additionally, something that I've started again because I can't boycott or because I can't strike for Palestine, I'm trying to pay attention to different products. So I'm checking labels. I'm seeing if labels, like as I'm going to the grocery store and I'm like, oh, this product looks great. I'm checking to see where it's coming from. Is it coming from Israel? If it is, I'm not buying it. And, during 2020, it might have been like, let me look at this label or let me think about this company and how do they support their workers. If it's a company that doesn't really support their workers, I'm not buying it. And so even though that might not make a huge impact, it does impact sales a little bit. And then if you can get other people to do it as well, then maybe there's a chance that product doesn't get bought anymore. I also think calling your members of Congress and representatives is really important. I have a link to do that where you can find your local representatives. If that's not something you're really comfortable with, you can ask ChatGPT to come up with a really quick script and they'll write it for you. Or you could just Google it and the script is written. And I honestly get on the phone. I'm like, hey, I'm Christina. I'm a constituent. I just want you to pass this message along to the congressperson. Please, have the congressperson support a ceasefire. And honestly, the person that's answering the phone is just keeping track of numbers. And so I'm not yelling at the person on the phone. It's a really simple phone call. They're like, thanks, I'll make sure the congressperson gets it. And it can be really intimidating, but it like once you do it once, it's not that bad. And then additionally, some other actions that I think people can take that are small but still make a difference is just like finding different books that you can read to educate yourself. So during 2020, I read White Rage, and because I was a teacher, I was reading books about education related to race. Right now, I'm reading books related to Palestine and its history. And then I'm having lots of conversations about mental health because it can be, it can feel super suffocating and hopeless at times. And, in therapy the other day, I was like, how do I get more involved while also working 60 to 80 hours a week? Like, what do I do? And then finally, I think the biggest thing that has been really helpful for me is working with Hana and Professor Williams. We've been editing a book called Disrupting Hierarchy in Education. And the book is about students and teachers working together to promote social change. And we tried in this book to really implement our values. So it's co-authored by teachers and students. We tried not to use binary words like teachers and students. We use words like learning partners. You know, as much as I'd love to get rid of like who's the first author and all that kind of stuff in chapters, we let authors decide their order because it could impact publishing. And so through that experience, not only did we try to implement our values, but then the hope is that people will read that book and maybe get one or two things out of it, or so many things out of it. And you know, through talking about it and people reading it, the hope is that, you know, small steps and small actions will make a difference. In the toolkit, if you're interested in learning more about our book, it's included in my last bullet. And we have a book launch coming up at Gettysburg on March 26th if you're available, or in New York City on March 28th. And so finally, just like in closing, I know I suggested a bunch of small things that you could potentially do. I'm sure there's a lot of other small things that you could do as well. This is not a comprehensive list. But if you could just take a moment to reflect and you know, what is one thing that you're going to do either today after we get off this call or this week? It can be really small: buying a book, having a conversation, adding your pronouns to your email signature, um, whatever it is. Just take a moment to either write it down, like physically write it down. You could text it to someone, or you can write it in the chat. But when you write it down, you're more likely to do it. So I'll give you like um, 30 seconds to just write down your action step. We can talk about it later in our discussion if you would like. But yeah, just write down your action step. I know for me personally, I'm planning on calling my representatives again today about a ceasefire. I should have called a while ago, but, I did call a while ago and I should have called again, but that's what I'm going to do today. Awesome. And then I'll hand it over to Hana. Awesome. Hana, are you good to go? Awesome.
Okay. Hello, everyone. It's so nice to see some of the familiar faces and familiar names on the screen, and nice to meet you to everyone else. I'm really excited to be here tonight, and especially to talk about the book, to talk about how to talk more with all of you about possibilities of um, getting active and also shining light to importance of small actions. In my part of the presentation, I'm going to try to answer three of the questions. One is, how can I identify and utilize the unique spaces where I can be most influential? Second, in what ways can I find and amplify my voice in my professional and personal circles? And third, how do I balance my responsibilities and activism without compromising either? Thank you, Kate, for introducing me, but I want to also introduce myself in other terms, in migration terms. So I was born in Zenica. I grew up in Kakanj. I finished high school in Mostar. Then I took a gap year and lived in Sarajevo. And then I was in Gettysburg and then in Sarajevo back now for the last 2 years. And I would ask you all to, if you could, just as Christina asked you, to think about your identity in terms of migration. And in the chat or in your personal notes, if you could also list places that you feel are important to your identity. That would be first part of the question, and second would be, where is home for you? And also 30 seconds to a minute to kind of ground us to talk about identities and them shifting. I started this session with the questions about belonging, or how I like to call it more, unbelonging, because being on the move has significantly impacted where I feel like I have the right to act. What I didn't say at the end of my migration terms introduction is that I'm also right now, again, applying to go to a graduate school outside of my country because I want to study anthropology and we don't have anthropology programs here. So that means for me, again, leaving a place where I feel like I have the most influence and where I'm most responsible. This is important because I was first a really active kid in my hometown. I was volunteering left and right, and then I also continued that in Mostar in my high school. In the final year, I organized the first Women's March, but with the help from older friends from Sarajevo. And it was really amazing. It was this formative experience of kind of learning before knowing the words what a community organized action can mean. So, and then, which I will later on, when I started working with Christina and Hakim, learn that that kind of leadership was based in this rhizomatic connections, not the hierarchy of one leader, one organizer, but a sort of community where everyone leans on everyone. So even before, as a minor, I had this support system to kind of learn from others, but also be the one who could teach others, which created these exceptionally high standards for what you feel like you should do and what you should do later on, which later, when I started working with Hakim and Christina, was mind-blowing, but also really confusing to go back to Sarajevo and actually join the workforce, especially for the work that I didn't study previously for. I Yes, Andrea? No. Okay. So I want to just briefly tell, no worries. When I came back from Gettysburg to Sarajevo, I came back because I knew I wanted to go to graduate school, but I wanted to kind of reflect and figure out what's best for me. So I said, okay, this is a year. I will work whatever, and then I will go to the best graduate school possible. I applied to a program. Later on, I realized that I got in, but I didn't get a scholarship, and I was really disappointed to find out that I have to stay longer. It was really disappointing because it felt like my whole life was put on hold because I was just waiting on for this professional academic development, because I just knew I wanted to be a teacher as soon as possible. And I know I learned how academia is so intense and how long it lasts. So this priority of going in it as soon as possible was really a priority. And then so I started working as a secretary for a magazine with a great goal of starting a reform of education in Bosnia and Herzegovina. But I was just a secretary, and I started feeling like I was losing my confidence completely. There were incidents where I would go in confidently to suggest new things to try to do, and where I felt like I was shut down. And then I felt like I had this amazing project that I was working on with my learning partners. And then I was acting completely differently in this real world aside. One of my biggest low spots was when we were supposed to buy a laptop for the company. So and I picked out a few options, and then my boss recommended to buy an HP laptop. And that was, I don't know, maybe March last year. And I said, let's do Lenovo one because, HP is on the BDS list. And then he just shut me down completely, saying that that's a silly thing, that HP laptops are really good and I shouldn't stress about that. And then he even questioned my sources, which struck a chord because I want to be a researcher and I take my resources really seriously. And what I did there was just shut down. I didn't really push back more. I didn't advocate more for getting a different laptop. And I found myself falling into the abyss of passivity because I was just waiting around. I was just doing my job, but I couldn't really get active in the way in how high my expectations were. So, which I learned from the work with Hakim and Christina was, okay, let's really reflect and in what way can I change things? I left the job of a secretary. I quickly found a program in Sarajevo that turned out really, really good uh, for me. And then I started as a student again, but then I continued translating work. And then I saw that small things like translating a very gendered language like Bosnian into English, I had such power as a translator in that moment to kind of make these little changes of making sentences more accessible, more direct, more gender neutral, or even in some cases more feminine focused because all the generalizations in Bosnian are in male pronouns. So it was this whole process of reflecting, having a really good community to share the experiences, and then also joining in on protests that were happening all around the city. For me, I felt embarrassed a lot of the times because I wanted to be the person who's standing in the front, who's organizing, who's moving things ahead. But I said at the beginning of my presentation here that there's this thing of me wanting to go away again. And with this pressure of if you feel like you're going away again, there's a question of to what extent do you have the right to be the one who starts things and isn't there to finish them? So it was all of these things that are the very valid questions I'm sure all of us have. But the question is, a bigger question is, how do you not let that turn into passivity? And as for the last 2.5 years, I always find my answers in Paulo Freire, Pedagogy of the Oppressed, and which kind of shook me completely and made me, okay, I have to get more involved in everything around. I want to read you just a quick paragraph of the intro to the 3rd chapter of the book, Pedagogy of the Oppressed. And then I would like to, if you want to, at the end of our presentation, to even talk about this and what activism and being active means for you too. So, quote, as we attempt to analyze dialogue as a human phenomenon, we discover something which is the essence of dialogue itself, the word. But the word is more than just an instrument which makes dialogue possible. Accordingly, we must seek its constitutive elements. Within the word, we find 2 dimensions, reflection and action, in such radical interaction that if one is sacrificed, even in part, the other immediately suffers. There is no true word that is not at the same time a praxis. Thus, to speak a true word is to transform the world. So for Freire, praxis is the combination of action and reflection. But the sacrifice of reflection is just activism. And I, for the last year, had too much reflection. So meaning the sacrifice of action, and Freire would have called that verbalism. However, even that is not useless because it translates into many, many little actions on the small level in conversations with friends, because I found one of the most powerful things is to have other people relate to you and you relate to them, kind of doubling down on this embarrassment that we so often feel of the expectations of the certain track that we're supposed to be on. And all I have to say to end my part of the presentation now is that I don't think that it's useless to post on Instagram, on your social media, to start conversations everywhere, because I had just the other day, I had an amazing interaction where I posted something about criticizing Germany's response to Gaza. And I had a really kind of passive aggressive response from an acquaintance from Gettysburg, actually. And he said, you know, it's what would you think if Germany was criticizing Jews? So I responded in a shorter paragraph, kind of sharing a lot of Jewish voices from Germany being pro-Palestinian, and kind of in this as calm as I can, even though I got really frustrated sitting at home. And then and I shared resources for him. And then after a little bit, he responded completely calm, thanking me that I shared the resources. So I really think the small actions like that can also make a big influence. Daniel, do you want to go on?
Sure. Thank you, Hana. Hi, everybody. Nice to meet you and nice to see so many people again after so long. My name is Daniel Jones, currently based in Virginia at home. I graduated in 2022 from Gettysburg and then went on to do my honors master's at the University in Chicago in international relations. And then since graduating the master's last year, I've been a behavioral scientist and data scientist for a contracting NGO of the UN, which basically, long story short, means lots and lots and lots of traveling. So usually based in the Middle East, right now home for extended holidays and working remote. So really good to see all of you. As you've been able to notice, and if you've been able to take a look through our non-comprehensive toolkit, we're each kind of focusing on different things, whether it's theory or praxis or like storytelling or different forms of activism. After my bit, if we have maybe like probably 10 minutes or so, we're really going to look to narrow it down into questions and discussions. So especially while I'm talking, if you're as ADHD as I usually am, and you want to like take notes or write down thoughts or be like, no, I want this very specific question answered based on your stories, based on your experiences, that sort of thing. And thank you, Raven. Feel free to write that sort of thing down. The three questions I centered my points on are: what advantages does my youth bring to my activism efforts, especially in technology? How can I effectively reach out and communicate in digital spaces for activism? And then what platforms or spaces can amplify my youthful perspective and energy? After listening to what Christina and Hana said, I think if I was sitting listening to this, I have the reason down, I have the story down, I have the theory down. I'm a very practical, realist kind of person, for better or for worse. I want to know what I can do today and tomorrow, and how I can do it to the best of my ability. So I want to, before I even talk about any of my story or where I've been or what I've done or any of that, I want to start by talking about how hard it is to navigate like the complexities of modern job markets, modern job applications, because no matter if you graduated in 2014, 2021, 2023 even, we're all young alumni by definition. And so when it comes to job markets, I find that is really not an empowering thing, whether we've been led to believe it or not. Job markets do not ask, or job applications, just looked on LinkedIn like 2 seconds ago to make sure I was right. They don't ask what you did in college, really. They don't care what classes you took. Being a young graduate is not empowering when finding jobs, right? It's really unfortunate. It's the way the world is. Maybe not all jobs. You can find a little bit better, maybe. NGOs a little bit, maybe some private sector jobs. Government is kind of all the same in terms of what they're looking for. But it asks, you need 5 years of experience, 7 years of experience, 10 years of experience, and that's all postgraduate. And you're like, well, I worked for 4 years at Gettysburg. No, 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 you didn't have your degree. It doesn't count as your years of experience. And so it really is inherently disempowering. It's looking to disenfranchise a lot of work we may have done in those 4 years because you weren't a professional yet, by that sort of common definition. Because that's not, I could talk about that for hours and rant, and I'd love to do that maybe on a different call. But when we switch it to activism and spheres of activism and kind of like empowerment of youth, I think it switches, and that's really hard for young adults to see. I think in terms of being a young adult and really fresh out of college, like in the past decade, 2 decades, whatever it is, when it goes to activism, it's really the opposite. Because in the job market, by their definition, you don't have all those years of experience. When you're looking to volunteer or be active, we then become uniquely positioned at the forefront of technology, innovation, social media, all that. We inherently have a savviness that people older than us might not have or might not think they have. That helps us. That means you can be active in any space, right? You have some sort of social media, right? Or have had it, or your friends have had it. It doesn't matter if you're active. If you can log in under like a minute or 2 minutes, you're better than some people in terms of tech savviness. Like, it's about recognizing those inherent strengths that you can then use for day-to-day activism. To talk about my story a little bit, I've been traveling a lot, and I really relate with Christina's talking about leaving the bubble that is Gettysburg, because I was very active at Gettysburg and very lucky to be very active at Gettysburg. But it really is quite easy there. Like, it's so easy. I don't know. At the time I was there, 2,800 students, now probably a little bit less faculty, less, staff. If you need something done, you can email 3 people and it'll be done. I then went to U Chicago, where it's the opposite, where it's like tens and tens of thousands of people. And I was hit by such a brick wall of like trying to get things done. I just stopped. I treated it like a job. I'm like, this is grad school. I slept maybe 2 hours a night at Gettysburg. I'm done. I'm taking a break, for better, for worse. This past year, I kind of flipped it. This past year I've lived in Lebanon, in Turkey, and in Georgia, based on where my job needed me and based on visa requirements. I was in each of those places for about 3 months, and I was able to organize in some sort of way in each of those places. If I am able to organize in Tbilisi, Georgia, where I do not speak Georgian, it's not an easy language to learn. I do not speak Turkish. I do speak Arabic, so Lebanon was like a little bit cheating, but I've never lived there before, so it still counts. If I was able to organize or reach out or find a group, and I only lived in each of those places for 3 months, you're able to recognize your bubble wherever you are. And that's what I kind of encourage you to do, is that there are these bubbles like Gettysburg College. You just need to find them, kind of penetrate them, and find out what they need. And you're able to do that by being a young graduate. And so whether it's in Boston, whether it's a small town in Virginia where I am right now, whether it is in DC, whether it's, Istanbul where I was, it's a huge city. There are these bubbles where it will feel like Gettysburg College again to an extent. And those bubbles need something. And so I really want to kind of encourage you. And I, just like Christina, just like Hana, I have links that I listed. My email's on there for deeper conversations about like different specific fields, that sort of thing. But right now, I just want to encourage you to reach out to these different groups and recognize that you're able to do that really easily. It's not a job market, even if it feels like one. You're not offering to work for them. They're probably not going to pay you. I'm sorry. But if you're super upfront and say, every month I have 10 hours to give, and I'm a young adult, this is my background. I've worked in, it's not a job application. You don't have to tell them when you graduated. You don't have to tell them how many years you have in something. If you did social media at Gettysburg College, I count that as 4 years. That's 4 years of social media work. It's not a job application. They're not going to background search you, right? Plus, then your job experience. That's going to give you a space in all of these NGOs. And I promise you, they need help. Like they just do. There's not enough people. There's not enough funds. If they call themselves an NGO, that means they don't have money, that sort of thing. And I speak on that behalf because that's what I work for right now. And so I promise you, they don't have money. Like every time I go to Panera, it gives me like an aneurysm. I promise. But really think about how bad the job market makes you feel. And all of those things that don't empower you there, it does empower you in the activism field. And so whether it be, Palestine or, NGO work, if you reach out and say, here is my experience, here's what I know I can do, a job market is going to test you. They're going to interview you. They're going to make you code in front of them. They're going to make you do whatever for interviews. An activism space is going to say, thank God we needed that for the past 5 years and we can't afford to pay someone with that. The thing where a lot of people, myself included, get lost in this space is, okay, I work 9 to 6, Monday through Friday. I prefer to sleep 8 hours, but let's say I sleep 6 a day. I like to eat 3 meals a day. That's really nice. That's like, let's say 3 hours. I like to cook maybe 4. I don't want to spend 24 hours a day working. So let's say like 3 hours a day for hanging out, gym, mental health. So where do I do all of that? That's where people get lost. And that's where you need to work with yourself to say, how many hours a week? How many hours a month? Because if you can't tell an organization that, you're not very useful to them. They're not going to pull it out of you. It's not an interview. That's really what I'm trying to hammer in here, is that like job market on this side, disempowering to young adults, activism market on this side, very empowering to young adults if you know how to word your strengths, right? You have AI. A lot of people older than you, whether it's one generation or two, do not know how to use AI. It's not a job market. You're allowed to use it. It can write anything for you. There's ethical standards that you should consider. Don't be dumb about clicking something and signing in and agreeing to every terms and conditions, right? But if you use OpenAI or whatever, that's an email in 30 seconds, right? And it no longer takes 10, 20 minutes. That's already getting your time down. If your job, like mine, pays for a subscription for you that you have openly, that's automatically easier. I have a Canva Pro subscription. I'm not a graphic designer, but I can try to be if they need someone and don't have someone, because just by being young, you know what looks good on Instagram, whereas other people might not. These are things that kind of separate a resume from what you can do. For the last couple minutes before we turn it to questions and hopefully discussion, I'll talk about my specific field of activism for a little bit. I work in behavioral economics and with the UN and UNICEF in Lebanon mostly. And so Palestine is very close to my heart. I've been there a few times, luckily, obviously not recently. And so that's really where I find my inspiration. And anyone who knew me at Gettysburg knows I even did it before, like for the past many years. So it was not new to me this year, which meant I, just by being there once or twice, already have a step up on people. It's not something I thought of to myself, but when I started talking to people in those circles and they were like, you've been there? And I was like, yeah, for falafel, like once in 2020. Like they automatically see you as someone who might be an expert in that field, and you should recognize that about whatever is important to you. 2 spaces I've been able to find my kind of activism circles more recently was in Tbilisi and once in DC last weekend. In Tbilisi, I was able to organize a Students for Palestine protest. I only lived there for 3 months, and what I did was, while I was traveling so much and missing that activism space, I promised that every space I would go to, I would start with what I know, send a couple emails out about, I have this many hours. I just told you this is how it should follow. I have this many hours, this many years. This is my experience. This is my passion. 2 mini paragraphs and a signature, phone number and email, and boom, people were reaching out to me. So I think it's the Free University of Tbilisi emailed me with a student group and asked to help formulate a protest. And so I helped in 2 months. I probably gave 15 hours one month and 10 hours the next, and about 1,000, 2,000 students showed up in a country I've never been to, in a place where I don't speak the language. Like it's very much possible. The other end of that is in DC, the protest that was held for Palestine last weekend had 400,000 people, and I was a part of that as well. However, for that one, I didn't organize it. I sent out fundraising emails once a month for about 4 months. And I got so many thanks and all this stuff. But that I had Chat GPT write all of them, and I hit send, and it probably took me an hour, 2 hours, and it made a huge difference to them because as an organization level, they're like, we need someone to work for us to do this. But as a young adult, you understand the technology, you understand digital spaces. You're like, no, you don't need to pay anyone to do this. I'll volunteer 3 hours a month, and I get some satisfaction out of it. It's something I want to do, and you don't have to pay someone to do that. And automatically you're in a circle. Then if there's another protest for Palestine next year, they'll probably contact me. If I have more hours because of that next year, I can probably do something more. They know you, that sort of thing. And so really, as we have 10 minutes left, I'm going to wrap up, and then we can have a couple questions, hopefully. Recognize what gives you inspiration. If it doesn't give you energy to think about it, you're not going to enjoy it. You're not getting paid for this. If it doesn't give you something back, be a little selfish, right? You're volunteering your time and you have life outside of it. Don't do it. Do something that matters to you, that you're passionate about, whether it's a field or a very specific group in your neighborhood or an organization, whatever it is. And really focus on digital platforms, focus on things that by being young, you understand how they work better than others might, and really just be honest with the organization and your time and your mental health, and be like, this many hours, this is my experience. And I promise you, send out 5 emails a month, you're going to be an activist. Like, you're going to be doing little things for these groups, and it's going to feel good to you too. And yeah, I'm sure there's a lot more we could talk about, but I'm going to end it there. Hope it was helpful. And we have about 8 minutes left. And I know Christina, Hana, and I would love if either there was a reflection or if there was a question. Both are just as valuable as the other. So if you just think to yourself, I want to do this. If there's an action item you want to share, like tomorrow, we should do this. I honored this. I think we can open the floor. And all our emails are listed in that document as well. And I know we love to get emails from you guys instead of coworkers. It's so much better, so much more fun. So yeah, thanks for having us. And if anyone wants to share a discussion point, question, or anything, or suggestion, please do. Or we can sit in silence for 7 minutes. Not as fun though.
Does anybody have, like as we're speaking, and as we spoke, does anybody have thoughts on maybe something that they've done or something that they could do in the future, or something they've done in the past that can add to this list?
Daniel, thank you all so much for sharing. That was really inspiring and encouraging. I think, Daniel, specifically what you said about being in 3 different countries and being there for 3 months at a time. I'm living kind of what I call in the middle of nowhere right now. And it's just really good to know that I know that there are so many people out there like you. But especially hearing your specific experience, like being somewhere for such a short amount of time and being able to do something so concrete, is really inspiring and really makes me give me the drive to want to get out there. I'm in Kansas for this year, and then I'm moving down to North Carolina next year. And so knowing that you can embed yourself within a community and really find a community no matter where you are in such a short amount of time is great. So thank you so much for sharing that.
see
I,
there's a, sorry, go
I
for
was
it.
gonna say I've just been reflecting on sort of everything that I've learned and that I've been taking away. And Hana was talking about the embarrassment that you feel about the expectations of the path that you should be on. And Christina, I heard you say earlier, I should have done this, I should have done this, but I didn't. And now I'm gonna take this other step. And that just makes me really think about how I think a lot of times when we are passionate about something, about a cause about social justice, we feel like we must be perfect in our activism. But what Christina, Hana, and Daniel, what you've all said, I think underscores the importance of you don't have to hold yourself to an absolutely perfect standard by taking even just some action that is better than doing nothing, because a lot of people don't even take that step to do that one action or that one imperfect thing. So it's really inspiring to me to kind of reduce a little bit of that pressure and just say, I want to do the best that I can do, and not worry about being the absolute pinnacle of all activism and just being able to focus on making a difference in the ways I can.
Thanks, Kate. I see there's a question in the chat from Hakim. He says, where do you find your courage to sustain your activism? And what do you wish you had maximized more while you were at Gettysburg? I don't know if Daniel or Hana have any specific questions or answers to that, or anybody in the room as well. I think that you all have knowledge that I think is really valuable as well.
Yeah, I would love to hear from someone, some of the alumni, if you want to share.
I think, well, thank you, everybody, for just coming here today and sharing your experiences. I think this is not really related to the question, but I think it's nice to see the various perspectives. Like there's not one way to be active, and like there's various timelines to everything, and just places in the world. And I appreciate you sharing your experience. I would say one thing that I wish I'd maximized more while at Gettysburg, as a student, I'm still here working, but would be just like the environment of the campus, like the small community, the benefit of like having campus so much of like be so involved in the community as well. It's not just a campus on its own, it's very involved in that sense. So just getting more involved in that sense, there's a lot more room for community outreach, and I don't think I utilized that enough until maybe my senior year. So that's what I would say. Something that I would, if I could go back, I would utilize that a bit more.
Thank you for sharing. Yeah, it's really powerful what you said about, college campuses being so many smaller communities. And I think that's kind of like what the world is, right? It's a lot of smaller communities. It's just about finding those.
One note on that as well is I now know that even though I despise LinkedIn with a passion, it has its uses. And one of them is that it automatically shows you anyone who went to a school you went to or worked at a company you worked at. And anyone in those circles, I have learned to not care in the slightest about sending them a message. And if they graduated like 20 years earlier than me, and I see they have a focus or, some sort of experience that is beneficial to something you're doing, whether it be a class or whatever. I've connected with so many Gettysburg people randomly because I sent them a very awkward first message and was like, I'm doing this. I see you did this. Would you be interested in X, Y, and Z? And a lot of the times you feel very awkward, but the reactions are not very awkward. So I highly encourage it. I really enjoy getting messages like that as well.
I also think too with that, again, in terms of small pieces, the job market is is a bit of a nightmare, at least for my experience. And so even commenting on someone's LinkedIn or liking it, like then shows it to your network. And so just boosting that post if someone was laid off makes a huge difference for them in their job search. Um, and I think we're just about out of time. Unfortunately, we can't continue this discussion here, but if you all would like to reach out to me, Hana, or Daniel, or anybody on this call, we would love to continue chatting. Like Daniel said, our emails are in that document, that toolkit. I'm also happy to give my cell phone number if you send me an email. Like we could chat on WhatsApp, we could FaceTime, whatever it is. But yeah, we're really glad that you were here today. And then I'll pass it over to either Kate or Jasmine.
Jasmine, would you like to close us out?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you all for coming on this afternoon and hearing from our dynamic, bold alumni. And I hope that you all have received some insight from them and kind of take some tips that they have for yourself and enjoy the rest of the week. And I hope to see you on another Alumni J-Term session.